to the,
I found out that even if the YouTube quits, it still goes on, so we're good. We're still taping, so it's available.
okay.
But our YouTube feed died, not only for inland wetlands last week, but the previous week for P&Z. So,
Okay, seeing it is 7:15, call the meeting to order for the East Haddam Planning and Zoning Commission for its regular meeting of May 24th, 2022. Could we have attendance, please?
Barry Brownell,
Here.
James Curtin,
Here.
Richard Pettinelli,
Here.
Justin Anderson, absent, Bernard Gillis,
Here.
Ed Govins,
Here.
Louis Salakrup,
Here.
Susan Kinsman,
Here.
Deborah Langdon.
So have you sit in for Justin this evening? For the, according to the records, Deb was sat in for him last week. Okay. Okay, minutes of the past meeting, which would be May 10th.
So 1 point on page 3, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph down. In addition, Mr. Pettit references page 3, section D, blah, blah, blah. Public cannabis are prohibited unless authorized by state law and zoning regulations. I think I meant the zoning board, so we get special events coming before us.
I just had a question, that same page, page 3, that third paragraph, the last line. He continues to give an example of you cannot use it in a park as being illegal. What are we trying to say there?
That was that issue where I was asking whether, I read it, I couldn't tell whether it was.
Even if it's illegal in this, in the town, if it's legal, it's, no, if it's legal in the town,
It's not
it's
legal in
still
state park.
illegal in state parks, right?
State parks.
Yeah,
So how do you want to?
I don't know.
It is, that word still needs to be in there. It is still illegal.
I would put state park.
Yep,
For the,
yep,
for this.
in a state park.
In a state park, yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Any other changes, comments?
I'm not listed as being present.
Or absent, right?
Or absent. It's just not entered.
You must have been quiet.
I feel kind of bad about that.
Sure you
That's
do.
your lesson.
Okay, any other changes? Okay, accept the minutes as amended. Actually, Deb, I was going back to the last meeting, I was here and I noticed that I had appointed you, and I'm not sure what happened at other meetings, so that's how I was judging who was voting and who wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because I know both of you did, because I wasn't here also. Is our recording secretary listening?
Listening in, yes.
Okay. Gonna come here or not, at all? You know?
As soon as she gets over her COVID, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So, yeah.
Okay, bills?
So I have two, both dated May 16th from Hallander and Sage. The first one is for general legal for $372.50. The second one is for Town of East Haddam versus Robert Kasner for $1,553.
Motion to pay the bills?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. No acknowledgements, site plan reviews, Okay, subdivision amendment, number 22-02-15, 1721, Banner Road, Keith Simmons, applicant and property owner, lot line change, map 073, lots 035, 036, 037.
The last name is Simon.
I'm sorry, okay.
So Mr. Simon owns the property on the map, if you looked at it to the right or to the east, and he owns a big, large tract that goes all the way around. The intent was to put a little of it with the piece in the middle owned by David Merritt, and then put the balance of it with the other land of Kenneth Simon on 15 Banner Road. This was part of a previous subdivision done back in probably the 80s. And so he's gonna make, he's just moving land around, accommodating the neighbor, and then adding it. It all complies with zoning.
So we're keeping the same number of net lots, we're just,
Not, lots are still gonna be 3.
because we're making one on the east side, but eliminating one on the west side. Am I reading that correctly?
No, the one on the east side actually extends all the way through that orange line and wrapped around to here.
Doesn't the orange line touch at point C?
Yeah, but the orange line's a new line. The orange line's a new line.
So that then makes a new lot there.
Well, it makes a smaller lot there. It makes a little bit larger lot in the middle, and it makes a super lot
Out of the one
on the one on the west.
Under existing conditions, the one on the west is a lot from the
Right.
yellow's there.
Yes,
This one is not an independent lot, it goes all the way back,
it goes,
right? So now we're making a lot and eliminating a lot. Or no, we're making a lot on the west, whatever, we're staying at 3.
you're staying at 3.
Number, but
When you're all said and done, you're
You're
switching.
But you're
you're
flipping this.
flip-flopping it.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
that's.
Yep.
got
Yep.
it.
The excess land is being attached.
Yes.
Is Mr. Simon selling that triangular piece to Mr.?
So eventually, if everything
Is that a
goes
sale?
through, he's going to not only sell the triangular piece, but also the larger piece as a separate lot. So he's selling off the balance of his land.
Right.
But I said, if you're going to go and do this, make the property lines configure now
Right.
versus later. Do it all one clean.
Why did
Quite.
you recommend that he do it now versus later?
Well, because if he just cut it now and sold the one lot, sold the balance, then this other property owner would have to come in and
Right.
reconfigure it again.
Right.
So I said, save you guys time.
Is the easement being completely eliminated with this new lot line configuration?
No.
The easement supersedes the moving of the line?
Yep, so the easement stays in place.
Because the easement was on the right side of the orange line.
Yep.
So how does that work?
Not our concern. We're just
Okay.
worried about the lot
Okay.
lines. He's got that easement and the cross easement, and it's just like, that's their problem with their attorney.
It's been there since back in the
Okay,
day.
it just looked like
Correct.
the easement, it now belongs to Mr. Simon completely.
Well, there's also the little cross one there, and since we're not,
No, I wasn't
this
talking about
this
the
is,
cross one.
yeah, well, since we're only addressing lot lines, I think we'll keep it simple category.
More questions, comments from the commission?
So what is the thing that says, along with that orange line, says proposed easement? See detail, what is it? That is an easement to pen. What is that? Is that what he needs to make that or something?
Probably, that's something that they worked with themselves,
Okay.
so maybe it's to mow the lawn, I don't know,
Is that a drain line going across?
so.
Are there any wells in that triangular area or anything?
No wells or septic at all, no.
Yeah, what is the dotted line? Is that a road going through?
Looks like an easement line if you look at the rest of it.
There probably something existing from when it was a farm. And they
Yeah.
just kept all that. It was probably the way to get back there.
Anyone else?
Item 7 on the note says that there's a well agreement between the two properties.
Yeah.
So is there one well that they share?
Yep,
And it says he'll drill a new well.
yep, that's,
Okay.
That's why I asked if the well was in that triangular area. I was trying to figure out why.
They don't need to show where the well is. I guess
No.
it's not
But
relevant.
it's not
that's
in
when
the-
they gotta do that as a separate application with the,
Okay.
Just a silly question, because I'm new. Was 19 absorbed in 17 or 21? Just where's 19? 19 Banner Road absorbed some?
no, it was never assigned to
Never
anything.
existed?
Yeah, so our assessor way back in the eighties just started taking kind of educated guess as to where interior lots would be without any wetland flag or anything else, so he tried to leave spaces in between.
So there might be a lot in back.
Yeah.
It's 19.
I guess that made sense at the time.
But it,
Yeah, it really,
Okay.
yeah,
I was just curious. I
That's all, it's
thought
all
that we
1 acre
were
zone?
missing a.
1 acre zone.
Okay.
Hey, any other questions, comments?
And I assume that Mr. Merrick is aware and approves and.
Oh, yeah,
has-
oh, trust me,
I
for
mean,
3 years,
Okay.
3 years.
Well, you said that it hasn't, it's not being sold, but will be sold after it, but it kind of, I didn't know how the horse or the
So,
cart.
so if the map's approved, then the attorney gets to write a final deed. And then the final deed, obviously, if he doesn't want it, he doesn't have to buy it. So,
We get some a free little chunk of land. Okay.
no,
Oh,
because if you don't buy it, you don't get it, and you don't file the map.
oh, okay, okay.
Make a motion to approve number 2202, 151721 Banner Road, Kenneth Simon, applicant property owner, lot line change, map 073, lots 035, 036, 037.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, regulation discussions, campgrounds, parking, have you been going over those? or-
Actually, we have been, but I mean, out of campgrounds, I thought we were done.
I thought we were done with campgrounds.
Well, but we're waiting feedback from
Oh, that's-
Economic Development Commission.
And we should have that for you at the next meeting.
We're waiting for them to meet and decide where they go.
Yep.
Yep.
Parking,
So I'm parking because I don't know how many meetings ago we talked about the possibility of relooking at potential guidelines for the Moodus area. And for those that weren't here, we probably spent thousands of hours on the East Haddam Village District, writing up the guidelines and going through it and massaging it and going back and forth. So what I've kind of done is copied out 90% of this document that's in front of you has the guidelines that it seems like some other towns either we stole from them or they stole from us, but seeing that ours are dated earlier, I'm like, gee, surprise. But these guidelines are just, things that you want to bring as, and they're guidelines, they're not regulations, but have regulations that kind of fold it in. I'd like you to take a look at it. 90% of it's ours. Some of it's Darien's, some of it's Coventry, some of it's Niantic. They all had the same kind of concept of designing for that village area. If there's things in here after you've taken a look at it and you say, well, this doesn't apply or all that, I kind of tried to cut out the things of connecting to the Connecticut River verbiage and things of that nature, but otherwise, we're still, if we're gonna use Plains Road and Falls Road as kind of the template of structures in the area that have some historic look, do you want this kind of language in it? At the very end, there are other stuff that we haven't talked about in the guidelines of any of our activities. Outdoor dining was a subject matter for a couple of the newer ones, obviously, because it probably got tossed because of COVID. So if it was rewritten in 2020, 21, it was discussed. Vending machines, we kind of talk about it in our the Four Corners section, but we don't really talk about it anywhere else. Traditional New England colors, don't really touch that, and don't know if you want to. And then Coventry had a whole section on franchise architecture, which
Do you really think we're gonna get a franchise?
you never know. But if you do, they have choices. And I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, but you don't have to accept their first thing. They
They don't
have,
advertise that.
huh?
They don't advertise.
They don't advertise that till you drive by someplace and you look and go, that's a McDonald's? Really?
Or you say you're not coming with your standards, then they'll pull out the.
Yeah, then they bring out their specialty designs.
Well, that would even go with like a Dollar General too, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
They were knocking on our door, so. They could come back.
Not sure we want one E. Not sure we want one E.
Oh, E1E.
First page. Reserve from tech, archaeological, I'm sorry, I was thinking, I read architectural.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I'm not advocating ripping up archaeological sites. For the record.
Okay, so this is something to come back to and,
something to review,
okay.
kind of.
Well, we're on that. Cumberland Farms, do they fall into any of this, or are they grandfathered in?
Well, they're actually in the C3, right, down below there. They're grandfathered because it was a garage.
So there's
But
no
it's still-
architectural standards that they
No,
have
it
to-
still comes back to us as a special exception, though. You know, it's the use that's grandfathered, but the design,
And
unless
still have
they,
to come to
unless they
us.
decide to use exactly what's there, that design is what, makes it important for review, along with the traffic and the entire setup.
Have they started doing anything down there?
I found out that they were finishing a project in Montville, and that the engineer and the owner said that they should be working in East Haddam soon, but they wanted to tie up that last piece and get that approved and out the door instead of working at two places at one time.
At this point now, do we have any architectural review in place for them if they're gonna change that building?
We do, and our special exception, we've got,
That
some
would fall under a
latitude.
special exception, even though it's grandfathered?
Yeah, because there might be potential for expansion of use there. The first thing they're gonna do is find exactly how much the maximum septic amount is for the property. Right now, it was a garage, and truthfully, the septic system was designed for 50 gallons per day. That's 2.5 employees, that's not a lot. So, there's room back there, so they're gonna have to do some test pitting and figure out what they're gonna do.
How big a lot is that?
It's actually over an acre, and it reaches up the hill in the back.
I'm sure.
Yeah, kind of takes that whole, almost like a big pie wedge.
Oh, there was a house there originally.
Yes.
Yeah, from what I remember, what's a big house? Sorry.
I remember that.
That was like an
Rick-
apartment house.
Rich,
I was trying to think, it's like a 3-story,
It
wasn't
was
it?
like, this was Makamuda's house.
Bernie, you remember, right?
Rich, you're missing the appropriate response. The appropriate response is, I'm sorry, I'm not that old.
Yeah.
Was that the Makamuda's house?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. And yes, I am that old.
I remember that. I was a kid.
You passed the house when you were walking to school uphill both ways, right?
Right across the street, through the woods.
And just to be clear, they haven't submitted any paperwork for this yet.
They haven't submitted any official. They've given preliminaries and stuff. I mean, so, but I said, you can't do anything until you know how much septic you have.
Is there any time limit on this, or they have?
No, they're
They've
big
been
and,
sitting on that for years.
yeah,
I think the town
Yep.
was hoping they'd sell it or
No,
rip
they're
it
not
down.
really Cumberland Farms, they bought it.
they bought it from Cumberland Farms.
So they haven't put in for, they haven't made any applications or anything yet?
No,
Okay.
no, they haven't even asked for the test pits yet because they've been so busy finishing the other project.
But any application they would submit would be a special application.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Backtracking a bit to this handout, do you intend this to be for the Moodus, the new Moodus Center,
Yeah.
or? Okay,
Yeah.
because we're also talking about parking throughout the town, right?
Yes, but I said if something comes out of that parking discussion that we should roll in the other parking, he said, let's just do it once. I mean, that wasn't our thought.
Yeah.
If there's something you really liked about it, that's missing in the other, then, you know, we can slide it over.
Do you have another copy of this?
Yep.
Want to pass it down and maybe Mr. Kazler can have it? For economic development.
So these guidelines, are we gonna bring everything over or just pieces that we like?
So I've knocked out some of the pieces. Oh, you want the guidelines?
Yeah,
Okay. Can I accommodate that?
thank you.
Alrighty. So I kind of knocked out things that were specifically Connecticut River or Historic District because it's not in the historic out of it. Now it's our turn to kind of take a look at, there is some repetition even on our existing guideline regulations for one and the other. And I think part of that was to hammer out the thought. You know, our thought was if somebody said, if they were gonna build in East Haddam Village, what are the guidelines they could go to look at it? We did the same thing with the Four Corners when the guidelines, we wrote those and did it. We just never got around to the Moodus piece. But at the same time, if we're looking for architectural features, if we're looking for landscaping, if we're looking for parking that's interconnected and walkways, why not just say it? So some of it's relevant and some of you might say to me, yeah, not so much. So. And then, you know, obviously, we spent time matching the photos to it, but some of the photos from other places for examples, because we didn't have it, and some we have here, so.
Is the original of this in color?
Yeah,
Can you email it to us?
I can,
Jeff?
yeah.
The original what?
The original is in color. Pictures will be better. What you give me a look like that for? Easier to see what you're talking about when I'm looking at black and white.
Well, it's about the words.
Not when you're putting reference pictures in, it's about
Okay.
both.
All right.
Email, how hard is that?
It's not, it's just. I figured you'd be the last one that wanted the color pictures.
Oh,
Oh, he's the first one. Okay, I know I haven't been here for about a month and a half for work. Have you guys started to look at any other, have we talked about looking at any other things since we are starting to wind down on campgrounds, parking, stuff? Is there any other projects we wanna look at this time? Is anyone, nothing that's come up? Okay. Mr. Kasner?
While you're discussing possibly other projects coming up, EDC has been talking about, doing something with Moodus, obviously, and you're getting into that with the parking, because that was one of the things that we wanted to get into. And also on the south end of Town Street, so in front of the Staley's and in that area, to look at that area down there also. And I was
Well, you
hoping-
had a meeting on that, and I thought it was left up to, you're talking about on Route 82. And you had a meeting, with the property owners and so on and so forth, but you're still waiting for more information from, on the federal side before we can proceed on anything, am I correct?
No, by all means, that basically has to do with just the walkway and the bike path.
Correct.
What we're looking for is to open up possibly some other uses down in that area, to look at it from a village district in that area, to see if there was some other uses that the board would consider for that area down there. There's certainly some very buildable land down there, and I'd just like to see if the board would be interested in looking at what possibilities we might.
Would that make it a zone change? change? Are you talking about making a new zone down there or something?
Yeah, it'd be a village zone.
Oh.
That's what we're thinking, but, I mean, we need input from planning and zoning to give us an idea of whether that's something that even interests planning and zoning.
We want to encourage all these village zones throughout the town when we're striving to improve the villages that we do have.
Well, I think that, you know, you've got basically a commercial area already there. That is the highest taxpayer base right there, is the Four Corners. That pays more taxes than any other of our commercial zones.
I thought we were talking farther
Yeah,
down.
so did I, yeah.
It is.
I mean, that's,
It would be
Four
a
Corners is one area, you're talking down Mike Staley, so let's
Yeah.
not confuse the two.
Well, basically, that's a growing area. We see that as certainly with Wolf's End changing hands, that's going to open up the possibilities of some additional uses down there. Staley's is definitely a growing area to see, and that's where we got the highest traffic counts. So I think we have to look at, is that an area we want to consider, or isn't it? I think it's an EDC question for P&Z.
Didn't we talk about this like a couple of years ago?
Yeah, it was discussed with the
Yeah,
plan.
I think
Knowing that, we
Yeah.
get like 250,000 visitors a year to go to the castle, and we should capitalize on that fact.
Basically, that's where we have our visitors, and do we want to offer them something?
We have done some work.
Yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
stopped.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we've taken a couple of years off of really doing much planning. And so I think we're getting back into the looking, where do we want to look for possibilities?
Well, we had looked at it when we were doing the whole plan of conservation development. Remember, we had thrown out that whole idea of possibly doing something in that corridor?
Right, limited retail and.
Yeah. I know that we got a lot of
Negative.
pushback from
What would a
property owners down in that area,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
what would be the difference with having a village zone down there?
It's basically something where you can put
Retail.
restrictions
but I thought-
on, and then have just a very, you know, we're looking to see if do we want to take and have something like a bread and breakfast sort of thing. Do you wanna
Those
take
wouldn't,
and-
those wouldn't be,
That's allowed now.
I would think that'd be allowed at this point, right?
No, you can
It's-
only have 4 rooms, and you can't have, I mean, we're looking at something like a 12-room B&B.
So you,
That's allowed too, that's called the Country Inn.
it's not a,
So really, we, every time we've talked about it,
that-
is
I
it's
don't
been a
understand the
corridor.
difference.
It's always
It
been
seems-
just a corridor zone.
Right,
So it not only including bed and breakfast or country inn, which is already folded in, there's strictly places right now that are just residential. And that's all technically they can be because they're not farm, so they don't fit under that category to have accessory uses. And they're not pre-existing non-conforming uses like the campground and things like that. And I think at the plan of conservation development, the discussion came out that said, well, what if you're in between one of these places that has some commercial use and you wanted to open up a first floor doctor's office or some low level, you know, activity like that? And they said, well, I'll come down for a special exception. I said, you can't because you're residential. Well, yeah, but a special exception, I said, it only applies to it if the zone says you can. A lot of people perceive that you can take a special exception application for anywhere and then apply it. So I think we've done this like 3-4 times. The first time we tried it in the late 90s, I got beat up really bad with that discussion. And then around 2010, we only got slightly beat up. And then we got slightly beat up again in 2019 because the people perceived it as gas stations and alike, and they kind of freaked out. So if you created a corridor, but then said only these type of uses,
It's more of a special, it's more of a district as opposed to I guess what's throwing me
Yeah.
is a village. I look
yeah,
at
it's not a village, it's a corridor.
We're trying to do it in mood, it's
It's
like
a-
get the work up front and.
Right.
one side of the
Well,
street
it's
seems to be commercial.
Yeah.
And the other side is residential until
I
you get
thought-
down to where Charlie Wolf had his
Dive shop.
dive
There was-
shop and
Dive
all
shop.
that kind of
There's
stuff.
a mix of there's some commercial spread throughout, on both sides.
Antique shops and things like that.
Where's it on the other side?
Flower.
Well, they're kind of allowed as a home, they're allowed as a home occupation, but not strictly as a
There's a guy
full
that
business.
had a dive shop.
Let's not have too many conversations. What were you saying?
We were just discussing what.
What does, okay, Sue, you wanted to say something?
No, I was trying to follow
Okay.
both conversations.
Why don't we do it this way? Why don't you get some interested parties for EDC? And if there are any interested parties in looking into this corridor, let me know and we'll try and get a committee together and see if there's any viability to it.
The thing is, we update the plan every year anyway, so this is always gonna be a point of discussion. And now they're gonna come with a walkway, bike path, I mean, there's more activity out there, they're talking about Palmer Warner House is gonna be used for like a lunch center or something.
Yeah, they're gonna have a visitor center there, and that's going to be probably within the next year. They're definitely, they just received a $1.2 million grant, from the state on the last bonding, and it's all going into the Palmer Warner property. So there's gonna be some, activity there, and they're going to be looking to do events, and, they're gonna be coming into you very shortly with an application for parking lots and that sort of thing, so,
They started to get some of that money back that they had?
well, it's $1.2 million worth of fresh money for, the Palmer Warner, so I gotta give them a lot of credit for, getting a grant of that kind of money for, one piece of property in East Haddam.
Well, does that sound like a plan for the commission, or do you wanna handle
I'd like
it
to
for right here?
Offer a suggestion. Let's identify how many residential units there are on that corridor. And then I think we have to approach those people and see how they feel. Because everything we talked about was low impact. I remember we did, it was all low impact commercial use.
Well, you kinda have to have a plan to approach them on first, I would think. So that you're not just,
Well, we did
you know
have
what
a
I'm
plan,
saying?
but the problem is, a lot of chit chat went out that wasn't true.
Correct.
So that everybody backed off.
Well, I think the chit chat came from, the plan of conservation and some of the maps that were put up or some of the, you know, I think it was a grandiose design if you scale it back. You know, I mean, like you were saying, doctor's offices, things like that, or, you know, more on a lower scale.
It'd be a low-key kind of stuff.
Yeah, but you're not-
We also have, basically, it's over 50% commercial now. I mean, Wolf's Den, that is a commercial, that's 220.
Now, you're saying 50% from Four Corners all the way down
To River Road,
to River Road? Okay.
and that's what I think we'd be talking about, basically where Charlie Wolf's had his business there on the corner,
Dive shop.
the dive shop.
I could understand why residential home wouldn't want to be sandwiched between two commercial projects, regardless how small.
I mean, we used to have doctor's offices right here on, you know, Plains Road,
Yeah.
and, you know, they're sandwiched right in between.
Yeah, Dr. Burns right up the road from you.
You know, they had Dr. Pardon Cooper, I mean, you know,
It depends
they-
on the business.
correct. I mean, I don't have a problem handling it with the whole commission.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it takes too much time, and so you get into a smaller commission or subcommittee if people are willing to sit in on it.
I think I still have all my old notes and diagrams.
I think the push from EDC last time was focused on the fact that there's a heavy level of traffic that flows through there. And they
Correct.
wanted to capitalize on a commercial aspect of that. And that's never gonna sell with those residents. When Jim mentioned things like antique shops, I think that's more palatable. But,
Which they can do now,
you know,
right?
what Bob's looking at is something that's gonna generate a lot of revenue, and it's
I
not
mean, there
gonna,
used to be a restaurant right on that road.
Right?
that was 40 years ago.
No, couldn't have been.
More than that.
We were eating at it.
Jim was at the bar, I can remember him.
Yeah, there was a full bar.
Before the
Yeah.
restaurant, there was a bar there.
There was a bar everywhere.
Don't you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Bars.
Yeah.
But if you could
Oh,
fine
man,
tune a
Smith.
list of things that would be acceptable to the residents in terms of commercial, then that might be a way to approach this, but
Low impact.
very low, yeah.
The
Well, you
gentleman,
do have a bar, sort of, kind of a tasting place already in the area.
the winery,
You know, they do have food carts there, so you're already doing the food and the drinking is already established
If
I
we're,
haven't, I haven't heard much objection from that.
Nope, I'm not saying that there is, you know.
if we're looking to capture tourism traffic,
Correct.
you know, stuff like an antique shop is perfect. I'm gonna go out to the castle, I'm all feeling all historic, and hey, look at the antique
we
shop.
got the gentleman that sells the flags and stuff that he makes. I mean, must be a home-based business. I
It makes them
assume.
all right there.
Right.
Stuff.
But when you bring this issue up, the
Oh,
residents
yeah,
see
no, I know, I remember,
McDonald's.
yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts, you know,
Well, that's what they're thinking. but
that's what
not
they're thinking. Well, you have to quantify that, or
That's
qualify
fine.
that,
That's, we can.
yeah.
They did.
Yeah, and
It's no big deal.
I think for what EDC is looking at, they are looking at definitely low key. This is, it's not something that we're looking to think and put that food to, that's for sure. And, but I think it needs a conversation between the boards and then, as you said, Bernie, come up with a list of things that we think are low key, that could possibly work there, and then see if basically the board thinks that it's a good idea to go ahead.
I remember you did bring up the idea of a restaurant on the corner of River Road there.
Certainly,
Any kind of
yeah,
a
a
diner.
restaurant is something that is very desired, and I think some kind of a B&Bs are desired. I think those are probably the two biggest items that they're looking at. The others, I think, are probably all pretty low key. That's what I see.
Right.
But those were probably the two. And I think that, you know, when you see what Staley is going to, it looks like it's working into that.
Where they want to
Right.
develop the whole corner here.
But then you have the whole Staley Farm going down there that you don't, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good land there.
Right.
They've got some, and they've got young ownership, so,
Right.
that's always another key. You gotta have some youth in here, so they can, have ideas to go do something. And I think that they do have that present in here.
Which is good, they need it.
Yeah.
So the commission think about it, and the next meeting, let me know if anyone wants to step up, and you do the same, Bob, also.
Okay. We'll do.
Okay, and at that point, once that form, we can ask Jim for some more information on that area of the path, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
While we're on the subject, Mr. Katzner had emailed me about possibly, getting the MUDA subcommittee together at some point. That would be the three of us and EDC commissioners. Do you want me to, I was gonna ask Sue, but she's not gonna be in the office for a while.
No.
So maybe I could ask Jim to throw out some dates, and we could try to get together at some point.
I'd like that,
Okay.
because it kind of stagnated for a while. So.
Yeah, well, we were hoping to get some financing, you know, and we may get 10,000.
Really?
Who
Well,
knows? So we'll see.
What's the discussion gonna focus on?
This is Buddha Center that we've been working on. We've
Yeah.
tried to get some study, you know, to.
Oh, hire a consultant, you mean?
Yeah, we want to,
Oh.
try to help us, you know, so we can work on getting everything buttoned up in that whole area and trying to sell it, you know, to developers, people who might want to come in and help us redo Mudas, or even
And
get
we
the
can-
state to help us.
We can pursue, with a good master plan, we could pursue DOT to help
Yep.
us with 149.
Yep, and we can start working on that.
Is
Okay.
there money available now
From the town or from the state?
from the town or the state?
Well, the town, we didn't get it out of, Finance Commission shot us down, but, I think Irene tried to get another 10,000, I don't know if it was in the budget or not, was it?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, so, so we weren't getting any help from the Finance Committee to help us generate money to help the town, so. And then we'll throw that on their lap, it's not ours. Okay, anything else at this time?
5-minute recess?
Second?
Okay, I got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
What am I seconding?
5-minute recess.
Pardon me?
5-minute recess.
Reset.
Okay, you gotta speak up.
We were kicking you off the board.
Second.
We all
Just
get a
remember,
raise.
I gotta keep the tape running, cause I can't shut it off or we're kicked off of YouTube. That's not good.
No, you weren't, were you?
Overview of the whole.
Right, yeah, he wants us to read through it. It did. I was trying to figure out what it had to do with parking. It's supposed to be all about, yeah, right. And I'm looking at it, I don't see a lot of parking.
Well, I think it's, I like, this is probably still on, but pattern after the village, you know, the East Town Village.
Right.
You know, all the kind of area. This is actually the village.
Right.
Oh, I get reading there too.
Yeah, my office is gonna text me the results.
It'll take 15 minutes.
We're gonna make sure that we do a dry run and it actually works.
Like 10 after. A lot of people don't even know.
Spend any money, I can tell you.
This is not the greatest thing to put on.
I know, I was thinking that myself, I said, why did we showcase that?
Talk about getting shoved it down your throat.
Right. Well, we didn't have a choice, so.
Somebody may be home.
Trying to figure out what goes where. This is what we're gonna be talking about, is a survey, I assume.
Oh, okay. You're going out old tech with this, okay.
Yes.
Well, that's different.
Well, you gotta go the other way. You gotta go down.
We should require everybody that does a presentation use this. Instead of those
Yeah.
easels and all that. Because by the time they get around to using this, it's gonna be obsolete. We should tell people that we're not gonna accept it unless they do it on our own equipment.
Very large. So up on the hill, yeah. So,
There was no complaints about this sand. No complaints, so I thank you very much. 'Cause I heard your truck go down, but I didn't see you go. And then Mike Widger told me that he was down there and that you dumped it already. I said, uh-oh. So I went down and looked. I said,
Well, it was in a good place that right in there, right in there.
yeah, it makes it easy right there.
Like, all they got,
You started off the.
the wires and that's it.
Right.
so you think a higher quality.
Yeah.
So far, so good. And I'm no longer the president, so I don't care.
Oh, you got out of that.
I'm out of it after 12 years. I was the president of our beach association.
Who's the new president?
Mike Widger.
Mike? This is gonna be fun.
And the first thing, right away, as soon as we ended the meeting, somebody had an issue and we had to go, because I'm vice president now. And he's like, I can't believe I've only been on here an hour and I already gotta do this. I said, wait, it just doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop.
Right, but if they
Where
don't,
was that?
Yeah, I did that since.
No.
Oh, man.
Wow, that's a, low-end district over there.
It's a thankless job.
Stuff that was not worth arguing about, people were arguing.
Yep. And they go to the meeting like it's no big deal, but you gotta prepare for the meeting, you have to have an agenda, you have to have all this stuff. It's like,
this really good.
yeah. And all they do is sit there and complain and criticize.
They only come to do one thing.
Yeah, right.
It comes up
Oh,
Norwich Road and
that's-
turns.
They wanna create a whole new town.
I was glad to hand off.
Out of town.
Right.
But AD kinda runs down there.
Okay,
Across the bridge.
from the east.
I just got off the, well, I didn't get off, but I got out of the presidency of the labor as of July.
The village, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was more preparation, get the agenda together.
It sounds like it was shot down.
It's a lot to it.
Arrange to make sure the meetings, regular joint sessions.
You kinda go to high rate of speed, though.
They don't mind.
Show up as we were invited.
That's right, you have to think of all the arguments that are gonna come up during the meeting so you can counter the arguments,
Yeah, you try to have
you know?
everything a little
Yeah.
prepared.
Oh, man.
The restaurant with the bar.
Really, it's good, but
That was a popular place.
it's not without effort.
They always cycle back to that house. There used to be a restaurant
Right.
there. But it's a historical society now,
Yeah,
and it will be for a long time.
because they helped me with, my chain of ownership of my house, so that was kind of fun. I was glad.
Issue of the land, the Landmark Society that Harvard House. That's,
Yeah, they can have events in that field behind the house, I
they
guess.
have a huge piece of land,
Yeah.
and they want to maximize that. And events like weddings and stuff like that would be acceptable. It's good.
Sit here, handle it.
You gonna be the bad guy?
This tourist.
Throw it on me.
It's gonna be a
Great.
We have to call you.
So well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you have a call?
Just opened up by itself.
You wanna call it back in while they're fixing that, there's people online?
Jim, should we call it into the public hearing yet?
But if
No?
we start talking about.
Why?
Because we're having technical difficulties.
So all these people are coming and they wanna stop at the village, so we have to go to the village.
You thought we're gonna use the handouts.
Pick one.
Little paper.
And you
By the
can't
time we
Start using this on a regular basis, it'll all be obsolete.
to go to Village Castle downtown street.
All the money we spent for this stuff.
I think we're making it more attractive, but with restaurants
Looks like
and
the budget passed,
those kind of things.
no ban on cannabis and the traffic.
What's this?
The results, what do you got?
Yeah, election results,
Everything passed.
No,
No.
no ban,
no ban, yes on the budget,
and yes on
and
the
yes
traffic.
on the.
So everything passed. Except there wasn't the cannabis passed, but there's no ban. It all depends how you look at it.
So our regulations don't mean anything.
Huh?
Our regs don't mean anything anymore.
No, they do. No, we do. Now we gotta get it done. See, the way they worded it was very deceiving,
Yeah.
but the ban was not approved.
Ban was not approved.
So that means the cannabis was approved,
All right, good.
so.
It's up to us now.
There you go.
Alright, so.
I don't know, shoot.
So do we want an extension?
Yeah, we need it. Yeah.
No rate increase. So that's a lot.
1.3 increase in mill rate.
What was that, 4.7%?
1.3 mill rate increase, so.
Okay.
Call us back
We
in.
good?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Do we have a call?
The East Haddam Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 at 8 p.m. at the Municipal Office Complex, Meeting Room 1 and 2, One Plains Road, Moodus, to hear the following. Annual review of the 2019 Planning and Conservation Plan of Development and review of the Affordable Housing Plan. You may access the YouTube live link from the town's website, www.easthaddam.org. At the hearing, interested parties shall be heard and correspondence received. Questions or comments about this application may be emailed to jventris@easthaddam.org during the hearing. We're doing that one first, right?
Yes. Yes.
Good. That's good catch.
What do we have, Jim?
So, I'm gonna butcher Megan Jules, senior planner for the Lower Connecticut River Valley Cod, is here to kind of guide us through this. She's been with us from the start of this program when we had public questionnaires, public hearings, even though we did it all in Zoom. This is your first appearance live, but this project has been going on since last summer, I'd say. We did discuss the plan of conservation development in our 2019 about affordable housing. The entire Connecticut River Valley has kind of used this opportunity to get everybody on board with a 5-year requirement of the state statute. So we're folding this all in, and there was some good information grabbed from it. And I think you're going to give us a brief overview, and we can discuss it and open it to the public.
You're on.
Thank you for that introduction. As Jim said, I'm Megan Jules. I'm senior planner with the Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Governments, or RiverCog. I'm here to give you a bit of an overview about this affordable housing plan, which RiverCog has been working with the town of East Haddam to put together and hopefully will get adopted. So here on this slide, you'll see the full project team. In addition to RiverCog and the town, we also had our consultants, SLR and Tyche Planning and Policy Group, who worked on public outreach and plan development, and Goman and York, who focused on data analysis. Sorry, I am quite soft-spoken.
Yep.
Testing.
Zoom accounted for that, I will say. So before we get into the affordable housing plan, I thought first it would be good just to go over what is affordable housing. So the sort of colloquial definition of affordable housing is housing that costs no more than 30% of a household's income. If a household is spending more than 30% of their income on housing and housing-related expenses, which would include rent, mortgage payments, property taxes, utilities, HOAs, and maintenance costs, then they're considered to be cost burdened by their housing. Aside from that, there's also the statutory definition of affordable housing, or what we might think of as capital A affordable housing, that comes under CGS 830G. And that's housing which, due to deed restriction or subsidy, costs a low-income household no more than 30% of their income. And low-income household is defined as a household making less than 80% of the state median income or the area median income, whichever is less. And this is the standard that's used both by the state of Connecticut and by HUD. So in East Haddam, based on these definitions, a family of 4 making less than $79,900 per year, or an individual making less than $55,950 a year would qualify as low income. So with that definition in mind, what is an affordable housing plan? Under CGS Section 830J, which was updated in 2017, all municipalities in the state of Connecticut are required to create an affordable housing plan that needs to be submitted by June 1st of 2022, so right around the corner, and update it every 5 years. And the guidance in the statute is really limited. There's not a lot of requirement in there, but what it does say is that the municipality has to show in the plan how they intend to increase their supply of affordable housing, full stop. So that gives a lot of latitude for the towns, and every community gets to decide which strategies work best for them. And why is RiverCog involved in this? How does this relate to regional housing? So RiverCog is facilitating the creation of 12 of these 830J plans in our 17-town region. And the reason for this is with the deadline approaching, RiverCog found room in its budget, extra funds from its general operating costs to help the towns do this process. So we hired a consultant and we've kind of streamlined it to help all of the towns push through and meet the deadline. Also, we recognize coming out of our recently adopted Regional Plan of Conservation and Development, a lot of the outreach that we heard related to finding ways to create more affordable housing. And so we kind of saw this as a natural next step, working with our towns to get these plans done. So we began the process with a region-wide analysis on housing trends and challenges. That was sort of a broad brush look at how housing issues relate across the towns and what's in common with each of our towns. And then that data was broken up and fine-tuned for each of the 12 towns that are participating. We held two regional presentations to go over that regional data that we found, and then we held town-specific presentations and workshops to go over the data and sort of workshop the recommendations and ideas that ended up in the plan. And then after these town plans are adopted for the 12 towns, we'll be feeding that information back into sort of the regional analysis. We'll see what each of the towns had in common, what everyone is looking to do, and see if we can find ways to coordinate efforts and share resources and make this easier to implement for everybody. So as you can see in the graphic there, it sort of explains the process. The regional analysis feeds into the municipal plans feed into the regional analysis, and both parts inform each other. But today, we're not worried about the regional part of the plan. We're here specifically to focus on East Haddam's plan, which does stand alone apart from anything else that we're doing. So each of the town plans that are coming out of this process have the same general sections to them. They'll each have a community value statement, they'll each have a housing needs assessment, they'll each evaluate local land use and zoning, and then they'll finish off with a series of goals and strategies and actions to implement. So here's the community value statement. A lot of this was taken out of your POCD, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it because I just feel like it's a very powerful statement, so I think it would be worthwhile for everyone to hear it out loud. A diverse and inclusive housing stock allows young people to live in the community where they grew up, allows current residents to downsize within the community, and provides housing opportunities that strengthen East Haddam's and the region's economic base. Future housing development should continue to align with the unique characteristics of each neighborhood in accordance with the Plan of Conservation and Development. In the Plan of Conservation and Development, the town encourages affordable and diverse housing opportunities to meet the needs of all residents regardless of age and income, while ensuring the preservation of East Haddam's historic and rural charm. Finally, East Haddam prides itself on its excellent quality of life for all residents, including its school systems, natural resources, and access to recreational, economic, and cultural opportunities. These factors contribute to the town's strong sense of community and culture of volunteerism. As volunteers critical to the function of the town and its emergency services age, it is essential that a new generation is able to live in East Haddam and fill their shoes. A diverse housing stock will allow new residents to enjoy all that East Haddam has to offer and ensure that existing residents can continue to live in the community as they move through different life stages and lifestyles. So that's sort of the overarching vision. Then we go into the housing needs assessment. The housing needs assessment considered East Haddam's demographics, population trends, and existing housing stock to determine the affordable housing needs for the town. The full analysis can be found in the plan, and the data will all be included in the appendices, which I believe you all have copies of. Much of this data was also presented at the town workshop, which is available to view on Rivercog's website, which is the overall project website for all the town plans. It's rivercog.org/RHP. But in summary, the conclusions found that 1,075 households in East Haddam, or 29%, meet the definition of low-income household. And that's people who are already here. About 68% of all low-income households are cost burden in East Haddam. And 37.5% of seniors, 65 and older, and 31% of young adults are indicated as by the U.S. Census data to also be cost burden. Now, looking at existing conditions, zoning, land use, your regulations, and your policies. One thing I will say at the outset, this plan doesn't go into where housing should go. It doesn't identify parcels. It's not that specific. This analysis is really just to inform what the recommendations should be coming out of this, some action steps that might be worthwhile to look into, and also to be useful for the town going forward as a tool to inform future decisions. You can pull from any of the data that is found in here in any future endeavors. So with an understanding of the housing need, the plan considers the town's existing conditions for the ability to accommodate that need. And as will be no surprise to this group, much of East Haddam is zoned residential, predominantly at densities of 1 house per 2 acres, although the Lake District and East Haddam Village do allow for higher densities under certain circumstances. But zoning alone doesn't paint the entire picture of what housing can be accommodated or where it should go. So the plan also considered environmental constraints and infrastructure limitations. 25% of the land in East Haddam is committed to open space, and 22% of the land is considered vacant. However, environmentally sensitive areas such as watercourses, wetlands, steep slopes, flood zones, aquifer protection areas, and public water supply areas will limit the use of this land that's identified as vacant. In addition, most of East Haddam is in sewer avoidance areas, and residents rely on well water and septic, which will also have limitations on the number of units that can be accommodated. Now, looking at these limitations aside, the POCD does provide several great goals already and strategies related to creation of additional housing opportunities, which this plan highlights and seeks to reinforce. With all that in mind, the following goals and strategies, which is the real heart of the plan, were developed based on public engagement and coordination with Jim, who was our liaison for this project. Strategy 1, East Haddam should pursue the housing goals and recommended strategies in the 2018 Plan of Conservation and Development. So already right there, recognizing what's been done and highlighting it and saying one great strategy for moving forward with additional affordable housing is to use what you already have. Strategy 2, determine if suitable properties should be acquired by the town for development of affordable housing. In the future, there may be properties for sale that might be well suited for housing development, and it might be worthwhile for the town to consider acquiring those properties for that purpose. And there are a series of action steps under each of these that the town might consider if that situation arises. And I should say at this point that this plan is not a binding contract. It's advisory. It's nothing, if you adopt this plan, nothing goes into effect tomorrow. Anything that's in here is going to need to be implemented. Additional steps need to be taken. And if you don't take those additional steps, there are not any consequences for that. Also, we aren't pouring cement. So if you decide as you're going through this, going through your 5 years and you decide you just really don't like something later on, it can be opened up and changed at any point. So that's a question that comes up often when we're doing these plans, and I thought now would be a good time to bring that up. Strategy 3, the town should work with the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority to promote home ownership in East Haddam. The CHFA is a self-funded quasi-public organization. Its mission is to alleviate a shortage of housing for low to moderate income families and persons in the state, and when appropriate, to promote or maintain the economic development of Connecticut through employer-assisted housing efforts. Mortgages through the CHFA are available for first-time home buyers. So this is a program that is, if it's used to fund a mortgage for a first-time home buyer, it does count as 830G qualified housing. And it's a program that a lot of people don't know about. So this strategy really targets providing more education, getting more information out there so that people can be aware that this is an option for them to help them purchase a home. And again, there's a series of action steps that the town could consider taking to implement this. Strategy 4, implement the affordable housing plan. As I said, this plan, nothing happens with this plan unless it's implemented. So these are guiding points to start the conversation, to start you thinking about things. One strategy to get more affordable housing built would be to implement the steps that are in the plan. So this would be consistently updating the plan, actively engaging with it, making sure that it's working, or if it's not working, making changes, and then amending the plan of conservation and development to make sure that it's consistent with this plan, which, as you already saw, this plan was written to be consistent with your plan of conservation and development. So it's really a circular process there. And then strategy 5, strengthening the region's capacity to further affordable housing. Implementation of the recommendations of this plan will require resources and an additional level of government and staff oversight. What we've heard from a lot of the towns going through this process is, if they want to provide more information about CHFA mortgages, they're saying, how are we going to afford a point person to do that? Who do we have on our staff that can take on additional responsibility? So really, this is where we're coming in, looking at sort of that overarching picture. What are all the towns trying to do? Where can we coordinate efforts? And that's really what this recommendation is about. If multiple towns are looking to, hire somebody to serve as an information source for affordable housing, then maybe all of the towns can hire one person to do that, and they can share resources, and it would cost less for each of the towns. So really, that's what this is going towards, and this will be carried into the regional portion of the plan, which we'll be taking to the COG board at the conclusion of this entire process. So with that, I would welcome any questions. I know that was a lot of information, so I hope it was useful, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
We already have a plan not a plan, but we have an application in process at Banner for 10 affordable units.
Okay.
Is it up to the board and the town of East Haddam, since I'm looking at the community value statement, do we select from town residents who gets those? How is that administered?
Yeah, you don't get to handpick who lives in the affordable
Then this
units.
doesn't mean anything.
Well, I suppose the idea of the community value statement is that you're providing opportunities for people who are here to live
But who
here.
will make that decision?
The people who move in, I suppose, if people live here and they're...
People who move in, how would they know?
Well, you mean if the people who live here hear about an affordable housing opportunity.
And what's the process to do that?
I
How
think
do you
there's
do
a
that?
wait list, right, a 3-year wait list, so if.
Is there a wait
No.
list? Do you go to like?
No, there isn't. For the senior center, yes, they have a wait list. That's for senior housing. They have a wait list, and what we talked about before, there. But when someone as a private individual builds something and has his 30% of the units is affordable, when they go onto the market, he'll have to advertise them as such, and then that's the opportunity. So that's when
So
it's,
there's really no set plan, this is all a bunch of hocus pocus.
no, he actually has to, it's all,
I
it's
don't
all.
see it that way.
Well, believe me, the reason they brought all the lawyers with the suits on here is because they're required to take their income on an annual basis and do all this research and make sure that they qualify. It is not a just, wave the magic wand and then walk away from it every
Those 10
year.
apartments in Banner could be filled before anybody knows about it, if they're selected by someone else.
Obviously, if you're,
Someone from the state level says,
No,
I'm
no.
gonna cherry pick these people. who
no,
live
no,
here."
it's the private individual that does
So
that.
the person building.
Building them,
That makes
yes,
that decision
correct.
on his own.
Just like when Bob, when he built down here the 33
Does
units.
he have an obligation to put anything in a newspaper and advertise it?
No, there was nothing
So
that's,
none of this is valid.
No, I disagree.
You're welcome to disagree, but it says here, a diverse and inclusive housing stock allows young people in the community where they grow up, allows current residents to downsize within the community, and provides housing opportunities that strengthen East Haddam's and region's economic base. And we're trying to provide housing for seniors in town that can't afford it, have to age in place, people who live here, who grew up here and want to stay here and maybe work in another town.
so
They're not given the opportunity.
So-
Somebody else is making that decision.
If I had
33 units went up for rent before they were even built. People approached him that lived in the area, approached him, and he had over 60% of the people from town move in there, and the others had relatives in this town that found out. He has 86 units, I think it's 86 units, is it, Bob, in Salem?
Yeah.
He hasn't even finished it, and the people in Salem have approached him, and he's got a waiting list to get into the units that he built over there. So the word of mouth was worked, and they knew who to call, and they got it done. So it does work.
I think it has to be more proactive.
Well, the statutes don't require that.
I'm not sure we
And-
can do that.
As-
Huh?
I'm not sure we legally can restrict.
No.
If I may, there are opportunities with acquiring property, and you can partner with a developer to build particular
Yeah,
units, and then,
that's something else. That's not what we were talking about here.
I do understand, I'm
That was
just,
the premise for affordable housing, to let town residents stay in place. If there's no proactive movement to get that to happen, then this is all a bunch of hogwash.
I suppose that's what I'm saying, is if you want to be more proactive about it, the town can acquire the property, the town can select the developer, the town can condition the development on, putting out certain advertisements in
I'm itchy
town.
here and you're scratching me here. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay, Sue, did you have a comment?
Yeah, my point was that if we agreed to participate in the Regional Housing Committee, they could share the opportunities of affordable housing, not only in East Haddam, but in our surrounding communities as they become available. So that there wouldn't be, the private developers just choosing from among the favored applicants. That the Regional Housing Committee would have this resource of available opportunities that they could share with.
So the regional housing committee is where?
Well, we need to create one, and we would need to work with the
That's my point.
surrounding
We should
communities.
create one for the town.
Well, they want to create she had mentioned a regional one through River Cog.
Right. Through River
And
Cog.
each town would participate in it.
Yes, and hopefully share and possibly whether or not they hire someone or part-time, full-time, whatever, that would overlook everything if I interpreted that correctly.
That's correct.
Because I agree with you. I think if we have affordable housing opportunities here, they should be available to people in our town first.
And I want to make sure there's a process in place that does that.
Now, you had mentioned something, I'm sorry, Sue, were you all set?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Towns don't have to opt in on this. But I thought the state kind of made that everyone needs to.
Right, so the towns are required to create a plan, but there's no stick, if you will. So you must create the plan, but there's no penalties if you don't do anything with your plan. So you can write it and put it on a shelf. Obviously, we're hoping that doesn't happen, but there's no penalty for not implementing your plan.
process question. So if we adopt this, then there will be goals and we will be expected to attempt to meet the goals, correct? What if we don't meet the goals? Because I'm hearing about once they're adopted and we have a RiverCog salaried person here, that if the planning and zoning or whatever, they don't meet the goals, then letters to the DOJ can be sent out and have been sent out.
I have not heard anything.
Naming people on this committee,
No.
asking why they haven't met these goals.
I have not heard anything about that. There's nothing in statute that has any sort of penalty for any town failing to meet their goals.
But not before we adopt this and have a
Still-
RiverCog rep. No?
Still no penalty, no. And honestly, I mean, I don't know, we don't have a formula for any sort of a regional committee at this point. We're still in sort of a consensus building stage. We think it would be a good idea just from having talked to all of the towns. But, you know, it wouldn't be someone from RiverCog on high looking down on all of the towns, because RiverCog is just a formation of all of the chief elected officials of all of the towns. So, you know, I have 17 bosses. They are the CEOs of each town. So it's the towns that create this body. They'd all have to agree to do it. And then there's no, I mean, again, this plan could be adopted tonight. Nothing goes into effect at all unless something is implemented. So you would have to put something in your zoning regs
So that
or
leads to
in
my
your-
other question. So let's say we don't meet our goals
Mhm.
to the satisfaction of the RiverCog. So from
Yes.
what I understand, that they could deny state funding for certain things if we don't meet these goals.
Nothing from RiverCog
No, not
about that.
RiverCog, but then the state would be, you haven't met your goals.
There's currently nothing in statute that says that. You know, the statute literally says each municipality shall every 5 years create an affordable housing plan that explains how that municipality intends to increase their supply of affordable housing. And it's, you know, this long, that's all it says.
I thought there was some language that we would become ineligible for certain funding.
I
if
would
we
think that the
meet
towns would turn around and sue the state on that one.
Yeah,
That's kind of
there's-
holding them hostage.
Yeah.
You know, that's, you know,
Yeah, how's that gonna work?
I've never heard that.
And these goals, you know, there are no number goals tied to
So
these.
you guarantee that the town would never be denied grants or funding based on our meeting goals?
I can't make a guarantee, but I can tell you there's nothing in statute right now that says that, and there's no finite goals in here. They're all consider, you know, research, you know, things like that. So they're not hard. There's no one looking over your shoulder seeing what you're doing on this, besides maybe some advocacy organizations that I won't name. But no, there's no body that I'm aware of that looks over your shoulder and sees whether you're doing these things or not. These are internal. And then from RiverCog's perspective, what we're trying to do with this regional sort of housing body is, one, to provide education, to be a source for information on, say, chattel mortgages, on maybe financing for developers, because I know that's something, you know, it can take 15 funding sources to fund an affordable housing project, and it's tricky. So having someone to provide that sort of information, and then sort of helping, you know, sort of matchmake when different towns are trying to do different things. Matchmaking projects with towns that want them, matchmaking towns that both need the same resource that could share, that sort of a thing.
So I have another question. My background is working for developers.
Mhm.
Developers want to sell and rent at market rates.
Right.
That's just the way of the world.
Mhm.
So let's say a developer comes in and does his 30-60,
Mhm.
you know, affordable housing, and 5-10 years down the road, it just isn't working
Mhm.
for him, and then he sells the property. Is that next owner obligated to stick with the 60-30, or?
It
how does that
depends.
work?
If they're deed restricted units, then yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that cannot be changed with
If it's in the
sale?
deed for a set amount of time, then yeah.
And part of being affordable, it has to be deed restricted.
Under 830G, for it to qualify, there's a couple of different ways it can qualify, Chaffа mortgages being one, but yes, typically deed restricted is required.
Is that forever, or is there a time limit?
There's a time limit, and yeah,
What is the time limit?
I don't know it off the top of my
I
head.
think it's 30 years,
Yeah,
right? It's 30.
30.
That's
Yep.
a long time, even in East Haddam.
I'm not saying no, I'm just telling you, you asked how long, I said it was 30 years.
So do you have any projects that are older than 30 years that, that you can kind of guide us to and say, here's a shining example?
I
that's-
do not, no.
Nor do I think there is a ton of them that are town initiated. I think that's one of the problems. I mean, other than senior housing complex, the rest of them aren't, and that's where 830G came out, what, 30 years ago?
Hartford just had its first, it has one of those where it buys houses, and they just flipped their first one last week.
Right, yeah, I read about that.
So.
They have a land
this is,
bank.
You know, and
Yeah, that was, land
Yep.
bank.
from a working group part, I mean, one of the things that came up, you know, in this whole discussion, and I thought was, you know, in our wheelhouse is, can you identify lands that are suitable? Because one of the things with affordable housing applications is if they can meet the septic and water, they can increase the density, and that makes the developer a little more willing to participate in it. Can a small town identify parcels that are viable? Can a small town review and see if there's soil suitability based upon what's out there? Sure. Can they actually have the connection with the property owner to say, would you be willing to give the town of East Haddam the option of first refusal, but file it in the land record, so just in case you or I slip on a banana peel, it's documented. That's probably where we can get to that point. We could also probably steal from other communities when that opportunity comes to take an RFP and get somebody to come in and wanna, you know, develop those parcels. The whole part about, you know, working with Chaffа and everything else and keeping up on loans and all that stuff, probably out of our wheelhouse and our expertise as a small town, and probably ought to be, you know, somebody on a regional basis, you know, that does it. I mean, unless you have a regional housing authority, you don't have an expert sitting in your office in any small community that does it, and probably not a lot of the larger communities. I think East Hampton has a housing authority,
Yeah, there's a
That it?
couple in our region.
Old Saybrook?
Middletown.
and Middletown. Well, Middletown, yes, that's right.
Cromwell, they're in our region.
I don't know, does Cromwell have one? I'm
That's what I'm asking.
Not sure.
not sure.
Okay, Middletown, East Hampton, and I think Old Saybrook.
I don't think Old Saybrook does.
No, okay.
No.
Then
I
there
live
you
in,
go.
I live in Old Saybrook.
Okay, well, there you go. So, yeah,
They have sewer issues as well.
no. They've been in Iowa for 40 years on that too.
Who's Saber?
Saybrook, yeah,
Oh, God, yeah.
yeah.
Any other questions from the commission?
Well, it seems to me anytime I've ever been involved with a real estate agent, the second question they ask is, are you eligible for a CHFA mortgage, you know?
Really?
These real estate agents, they dial in on that. Is
That's
that,
amazing. I have not heard that. I've actually heard quite the opposite. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, they don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
okay. My second question is, on a regional basis, do you have a tie-in with like organizations like Habitat for Humanity?
Yes, actually, they've reached out to us recently to
Okay.
see if they can.
Because I've
partner.
never seen anything in this town, and if, you know, we do have a lot of real estate that could be rehabilitated.
Absolutely.
That's a great organization.
Yeah, and how do we go about reaching that through a regional?
Right, and that's sort of what we're hoping is that if we have an entity that works across all of the towns that can be kind of a point contact for, you know, and can partner with, say, Hope and partner with Habitat for Humanity and partner with developers that focus on affordable housing and try and make those connections between those groups and the towns that want particular development for affordable housing, then that would be useful instead of having a scattered approach across all of the towns. So the idea would be that, say, someone from Habitat for Humanity is partnering with this housing committee or whatever it may be, and we know that East Haddam would like to work with Habitat for Humanity because there's a representative from East Haddam on the committee, and that connection is made.
Yeah, I mean, we have foreclosures in this town, and that's a great opportunity for an organization like that to move in.
Isn't there a Habitat house down by Haddam?
Yeah, right before the store,
Yeah.
right at the bottom of the dip
Back
on the left,
in, yeah.
on the right.
The one up by the dam still, Habitat for Humanity house?
I know there was a HUD, but I didn't know if it was a
Thought it was a
Habitat.
Habitat.
Okay, it could have been. I mean, that was the only
The only one I know of.
The only one, yeah.
But they have to come in at a very low price for it to be, because there's a lot of owners' sweat equity involved.
Lot. Yep. That house at that time fit that criteria.
Anyone else
Sweat
have a
equity.
question? More questions, comments? I'll open it to the audience for questions or comments, or to the public. Tony?
So I live in a lake district, and there's a lot of small cottages, that are mostly seasonal, but a few are, turning to year-round. And, there's, back in October, when we talked about, the regulations of minimum livable space, I believe it's 700 square feet for a year-round or livable house, 700 square feet. So if someone sells a house or a cottage that's 500 square feet, and the new owner doesn't know of the new regulations of it having to be at least 700 square feet, that's.
So we could solve that problem. We took that out. That disappeared.
Oh, it's not. there's
So
no
it's
minimum?
that disappeared. The minimum square footage, we reaffirmed it. It disappeared. So it's out.
The state
So-
told us to do
Yeah,
that.
that was part of it. We found out of a court case a long, long time ago. So that is gone. So that helps. The biggest thing that comes with the lake lot conversion, and I am fielding 2 to 3 phone calls a week about it, is the whole ability of tic-tac-toe between everybody else's septic and wells to see if they can make it work. And unfortunately for a lot of these people, I have to tell them that these places were built in the 40s, 50s. There's not a lot of documentation, and this summer they're gonna have to do a lot of knocking on the doors and see if they can find out where the neighbor's stuff is at, because it literally is not documented. So that's now that they've found out that the potential exists for it, they are exploring it. It does provide an opportunity for housing in a smaller square footage structure, so we'll see where it leads, but the industry of engineers and surveyors is so jammed up right now that there's been a log of trying to get work done. I have some of the surveyors and engineers said they're not accepting new work because they have to finish what they have on their desk first, so.
So, but how, if a new homeowner, is it up to the homeowner or the mortgage company, or the realtor to find out whether their septic system is in compliance when they sell?
So,
A small lot.
This isn't part of what we're talking about, Tony. Can
Well,
I
I just,
pull this up?
affordable housing, and someone said, put it in the Lake District. I'm just a little concerned about, properties being sold and people are living year round in houses that are not,
Compliant.
compliant, right?
Mhm.
That's all, just.
No, I get it. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to shut
That's
you down.
okay.
I wanna deal with what we're in the middle of talking. Anyone else on affordable housing? I have a question. I guess what has bothered me about it is, if someone comes in with an application and they throw in affordable housing, we as a commission, our hands are tied at that point. I mean, and it's like, I don't mind the state having us meet a certain quota, I'm fine, but let the towns decide where they would like it and how they dictate it.
Right.
I think would be easier. Is there other pushback from other commissions on this?
Yes,
And what's going to happen?
so many problems with 830G. I could not agree with you more. It sets up a really adversarial process between towns and developers. What we would hope with these plans is you could think of it as an opportunity to show developers what you do want. It's not perfect, but it is an opportunity. So if you have areas that you would like to be developed with a particular type of housing, and you can say, if you want to build this, it can go here. We're not going to give you a lot of trouble on that. Developers will like that. I mean, to be honest, going through a lawsuit is not really friendly for a bottom line of a project. So I think if you give a blueprint for a developer to build something, then you will find a developer that wants to build that thing. And that kind of a partnership, in Saybrook they call it friendly 830G, where it's, qualified affordable housing, but they're kind of partnering with developers on the front end instead of waiting for the developer to come in with a project that gets shoved down everyone's throats.
Yeah, but that's totally beyond our control as to whether a developer's thinking about buying a piece of land and putting up a apartment house. I mean, the whole thing boils down to if somebody drops a 10-unit apartment house in any residential zone, I don't care whether it's next to my house, his house, or your house, your property values are going in the toilet like overnight, and that's the truth. So, I mean, that's the issue with the whole thing. I mean, zoning sworn to uphold property values. Well, guess what? I mean, even in the, some of the literature in the beginning of the plan talks about maintaining values and whatnot. That's the issue, because if it drops like yours, I mean, a $450,000 house is gonna be worth $350,000 overnight. That's just the reality of it, so. It's not the people that live there, because those incomes, we all know plenty of people with those incomes, and that's not an issue, but. I mean, that's the only problem I see with it is like, I sure don't want it next to my house, and I'm sure nobody else wants it next to them. So, I mean, that's the bottom line behind the whole thing, because it's gonna kill your values.
I understand, and it's unfortunate that we are stuck with the state statutes that we are stuck with. We're doing our best to create the best scenarios for the towns, given what we have.
Like Jim said, a developer come in and just plop it down pretty much where he wants.
Yeah, but can we establish an underlying zone where we want, as a planning agency, the affordable housing to be built?
So that works in a way with a friendly developer, but our 830G, and I'll give you an example. See, I can say it because it's already deed restricted. If somebody ever got the brainstorm, that Fox Hop Yard golf course, which is all sand and gravel, and they got mad because we didn't allow a subdivision for 28 lots, turned around and said, 440 units. Guess what? I think Jim and I could figure a way to get 440 units out there. That's not where you want it. So I do like the idea of progressively looking at lots that are available. Our plan does say where we want denser areas. Already it says in the East Haddam Village and around Moodus, because the services are there. And all of those things are there. And so now it's kind of the case of, does this commission, if we adopt this plan, want to actively go out and look at some property owners and talk about some sort of option to buy down?
Are you saying specific properties or
It's the only way it's a zone. We've already created the zone.
Yeah.
We've already said we'd prefer to have denser developments in the village centers, because no matter what, the opportunities are better. The traffic flows better. You're not going as far as from the schools. All of those discussions that we continually have. But the second part about it is an adoption of plan is if you do adopt it and you do take the premises of what can we handle as a board, do we go out and look at property owners and, have meetings with them and discuss it? Because eventually, no matter what, you can say you're gonna be here forever. There's gonna be a certain point where you ain't here forever. And then what happens with it next? At the minimum, if the town's interested, having the option of first refusal allows the town to come in and do that partnering with somebody who's doing it at that time to see if we could do something that's progressive.
Is it too late to do Banner, right of first refusal? I think it is.
Oh, yeah, that's already.
Oh, yeah, because Banner's already a planned residential development unit. And you know, but Banner might be an opportunity, even though I'm saying that out loud, you know, they have other areas, they have all that, that may be something that they look at. This is
I would like
their
to see
grand experiment,
Residents get a shot at those apartments,
right?
and there's gotta be a way we could do it.
Would Banner be able to do a deed restricted 55 plus since it's a golf environment?
So-
That would,
They didn't come in front of us.
that would fit the,
Yeah, that
They could, they just didn't.
they didn't, and they're not. I mean, they originally applied to us in the '70s as no age restriction. It fits the
but I think
regulations.
it'd be more sellable if it was a deeded 55 plus because
But-
it would satisfy the, you know, our senior citizens who want to stay in town and scale down.
But it doesn't cover, yeah.
I could foresee next year a 500 to 1,000-page bill being passed in the middle of the night in Hartford. So
Oh.
everything we're saying today could change next year.
If it does,
Well,
it
that's
does.
the enforcement issue too. We all know. If it doesn't matter whether we do this and there's no enforcement,
Well,
then why are we
not
bothering?
yet, not yet.
Because we know if you do this,
Get it
then
back on.
Yeah, because there's gonna be enforcement.
We got another public hearing coming up.
Mr. Casimir, you got a question?
Yeah,
Comment?
I have a comment. I think that, maybe just going on what Bernie brought up, making an area so that a developer knows this is where you would like to do it. I think saying that in our areas, maybe a little bit too broad. Maybe if we could take and give it a little bit more definition as to where you want this to be. Falls Road, Plains Road, Wigwam Road, whatever, but give it a little bit of a boundary as to where you would really prefer. And then say, okay, so if I'm a developer, I'm gonna come in and say, okay, this is the area where they wanna do it. Well, I'm gonna go approach the property owner and say, I'm gonna buy it from you today. I don't know why a property owner is gonna give us a first option unless we're writing a check. And I don't think we're gonna do that. But I think that would be very good for us to basically give somewhat of an idea as to where you think is the most appropriate place to do it. And then a developer would, if they're gonna go out and buy a piece of property, it would make the most sense to do it where the town has already determined that this is where they want it. So I think a little bit better definition of where you'd like it.
We can't spot zone it though, it's gotta be a casual conversation.
Oh, no, I mean,
No.
you can make a.
Well,
zone.
the way
So-
the state has it, you can put it anywhere you want.
So we actually do have a zone, and it's called under special standards for planned residential unit development. And we have specified, and we've had this here for 30 years, right? We've specified the R1 half, the resort zone, the R1, and the former Mudas. That's what we specified. It's been there for 30 years in that's what we've said all along is where if you're going to cluster, if you're gonna build units together, if you're gonna try to do a community system and all this stuff, that's where we prefer it, because when you look at the map, it's around the schools and the bank and the library and
Well,
all
that's
that.
kind of what we were looking at when we were doing Mudas, you know, this whole other area around here that would be, you know,
Yeah, and I think that would give it some definition. And,
Correct.
you know,
but it's already written, so it is in there.
Yeah, okay, so.
Isn't that
Gives us
depending
some
on the
idea.
soils for the septic and all that to be able to?
Everything
Yeah.
is.
Everything does,
So
yes.
even though we could say we want it there, if the soils don't
It would have to be
support it,
We'd have to go with the soil map.
But what we're saying is we don't want it in the R2 and the R4, because that's the farther stretches of the town. And
Well,
it's,
I mean, that's totally residential and it just doesn't fit there. I mean, it's,
so,
we talk about property values, just think about it being next to you, that's all I can say.
you might bring mine up.
Anything you'd like to add?
I guess I would just say, you know, although there's no requirement to implement the plan, the idea would be that it's a plan that you want to do something about. It's an opportunity to take proactive steps to get the affordable housing that you want. It is a state requirement, we have to do it, so we might as well make it the best we can and get the most out of it that we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
I guess I'd like to ask one question. Why can't the regional agencies push Hartford to make accessory housing part of the affordable housing piece.
They can be if they're deed restricted, but most people are not doing that.
People
Yeah.
don't wanna commit to that
Right.
on their private residence, they're
So the
Garage.
accessory units would have to be deed restricted to
Yeah.
affordable housing.
for 30 years.
I will
30 years.
say that the regional agencies, at least RiverCog, we are pushing to create kind of new standards, a new way of looking at affordable housing in the state, going through this process that we are trying to coordinate with the towns, trying to be proactive, so that maybe we can get some better regulations out of Hartford going forward. To be continued on how successful we are with that, but that's part of the process, because 830G has a number of problems, and this whole focus on counting versus not counting units really just backs everyone into a corner, when really a diversity of units, whether they qualify or not, are beneficial to a variety of incomes and household types. So that's kind of the tack that we're taking. So ADUs do provide valuable additional housing, and they do provide housing for these groups that we're talking about, young people, older people, people with lower incomes, but they don't count. So
Isn't there such a naturally occurring?
Yep.
So why wouldn't the ACUs count for the naturally
they
occurring?
do, they are naturally occurring
So
affordable
why-
housing, but they don't count as affordable housing for that 10% under 830G. So 830G says if you don't have 10% of your units as qualified affordable, that's CHFA mortgages and deed restricted units, then a developer can basically come in, and if they want to provide qualified affordable units, they can plop them anywhere. And yeah.
Just to circle back, the deficit, I thought I recall, it was like 1,500 that we were found to be in deficient.
I'd have to look back, but
So I think a lot of people are concerned that if we met that goal, that we would have to build another school or an annex on the school. So is there state funding available if we meet the goal, but we have 3,000 new kids that we have to figure out where to put in school?
no.
Oh,
No. But
so they don't have to homeschool?
I mean, honestly, I think the focus on the 10% is not. I mean, people focus on the 10% because of the lawsuit and because
Well,
of.
1,500 units would, if there's 2 children on average, that's 3,000 kids, which we have to build another
Yeah.
school.
And that's not the case. So what the problem, the pushback from the larger communities is all these decades is they've had all of the affordable housing applications because they have sewer and water. So they're saying, wait a minute, we met our 10% plus some,
Right.
so we kind of got the backlash on that and saying, well, okay, you don't have any. The reality is, if somebody comes in to do it, you have to have a centralized septic system. You have to have a centralized well. You have to have, everything just line up perfectly. And what they were basically, the courts are saying is we're sick of, the statutes in the courts are saying we're sick of having the applications go to court. If you want to just deny everything, then you're going to go to court unless you've met 10%. If you met 10%, you're not there. So for us, it's a case of somebody comes in with this plan or without this plan. If they meet the criteria of the statutes, this commission has to approve it. What we're looking, I think, is the term here is being proactive, is to say, how do we look forward for seniors and young people? And the problem is that we have stepped to the plate with the accessory units and reducing the size so they're usable. We stepped to the plate by talking about the lake zones and saying if they can demonstrate proper septic and well and meet the public health code, they will allow it. We're just not getting credit for it. That's okay. We know what we're doing. It's fine. These are incremental steps.
It's not to say that we can't advocate and other planning and zoning agencies can't advocate to have the accessory units recognized towards affordable housing.
Yep.
This was the new requirement by statute. It can change. I think this plan is helpful because it gets us thinking about how we want to address affordable housing. I think everyone would agree. We would want members of our community to continue to live in our community. I thank you for your efforts on our behalf. I think this is a helpful
point, are we done with the public hearing side?
Just to let you know, nothing came over
I
the
meant to ask that.
computer.
Okay.
No
other questions from the audience? Okay. Do we need any? Then I accept the motion to close the public hearing. Do you have anything else before I close it? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So this is our motion. You guys all went through all this, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
I did.
Questions, comments before we?
Just a comment, there's a lot of legislation, happening in Hartford affecting this,
Yep.
and I don't know if the members are aware. So it's kind of a fluid situation to adopt right now. So I would like to see how the legislation that's pending for this session might affect this.
When is that gonna end?
Uh,
That's painful. This is always gonna be a fluid situation, I just wanna say, I mean,
Okay.
I've lived through this of waiting for things to
But
happen
we
through the
adopted
legis.
and then the rules all changed.
That's,
Are we
Change-
obligated to
it's
adopt
changes.
this?
huh?
You wanna mention?
What's
We
that?
have to adopt
Adopted
this?
tonight, don't we?
We have to do it tonight?
Yeah, we do.
You don't have to do it tonight, but to sit there and say we're gonna wait for the next legislative session to be through and adopt
Actually,
it.
we have to adopt it by the first, correct?
So
Or
this
we?
is just
Yeah.
This is just kind of a pro forma meeting.
So
that
we don't have to.
It's gonna pass, they're gonna jam it down our throats no matter what we do.
You already had that for 30 years.
What?
The legislation for 30 years under 30G has been there for 30 years. That legislation saying if you have an affordable housing application, that if you don't approve it, it goes to Hartford Superior Court, doesn't go to Middlesex. That's been there for 30 years. That was the jam it down our throat. That was the jamming down the part. What this legislation says is, everybody try to adopt the plan, please.
So if my interpretation is correct, we can adopt this plan, meeting the June 1st deadline, and next meeting, we can start talking about what we don't like about it and how we're gonna modify it,
Absolutely, you can, any plan you can modify at any time.
How we could implement it.
or how we can implement it. Well, you know, yeah.
And if legislation comes up, then we say, okay, how does that apply to this?
Don't adopt it tonight.
Then we call
we're gonna
Megan.
Miss the state deadline.
And in missing the state deadline,
I don't know.
What happens?
Penalties.
No, if,
Penalties.
what was that?
if you miss the state deadline, you have to write a letter saying why you missed it and when you intend to submit.
So then the options are, I know I'm not writing a letter.
Then the
So it's
penalty.
either we adopt it,
Or we write a letter.
We write a letter and we
Saying-
have to adopt it.
Right, but if we adopt it, if the commission adopts it, as we were talking about, we can amend it, we can try to implement it, we can work with it at that point, but we've already met our,
Statutory requirement.
Or we can not adopt it, write a letter saying we're evaluating it and then amend it and everything else. So it sounds like all we're doing is adding an extra step of writing a letter.
So why don't we
Right.
just adopt it?
That's kind of where I'm going.
Please.
We as public officials were sworn to uphold state law if we're required to submit a plan by June 1st. I suggest we submit a plan by June 1st.
Are the other towns in the River Cog,
right, we close the public hearing.
Well, she is staff, so you can ask that.
She is, okay.
Yeah,
Just wanna make
yeah.
sure.
Yes.
are
My job.
interested in establishing this regional housing committee?
We do have some towns that are interested,
Some.
yes. Yeah, we haven't really workshopped it with all of the towns yet. So the idea would be, once we get all of these 12 individual plans adopted, we'll see what the overlap is with towns that we have talked to about having this kind of regional commission or committee, or we don't really know what the formation would be yet. And then we would come back to the towns and see, kind of workshopping some ideas of what this could look like, take that to the Rivercog board, who are the CEOs of all of the towns, and then see if they will, adopt something like that.
But if we were to adopt this tonight, that might be a first step that we would take.
Yeah. So what we would do, like I said, once we're all done and we do the workshopping, we'll make some regional recommendations that we'll workshop with all the towns and then go to the COG with it. So there's quite a bit more legwork that has to be done, but that would be one of the first things that we would be looking at trying to do, yes.
I make a motion, we adopt the Town of East Haddam Affordable Housing Plan as presented tonight by Regional Council of Government.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain since I missed most of the drafting of this.
Who's opposed and who's abstaining?
I'm opposing.
I'm opposed.
I'm abstaining because I was not here for most of it.
We're gonna call police on this one?
So it passes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We only have one more part. We also, were the review of the plan of conservation and development.
Yep.
You might as well, since people are here, ask if they have any comments. 'Cause that one we can keep rolling along.
Oh, for the, yeah.
Plan.
Is that a separate call?
No, he called it all out, so.
Okay. If there are any people from other commissions in town, we are doing our annual review for the Conservation and Commission, Conservation and Development. Comments, questions from any of the other? Yes, sir.
I'm John Olin with the Conservation Commission, and I'd like to report that the Conservation Commission is reviewing additions to the Plan of Conservation and Development regarding climate resilience, specifically with regards to Chapter 4 and the goals. And we're going to be reviewing this at our next meeting on June 7th, and then report back to those who are revising the POCD.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Do we want to go into,
We have more audience members here. I assume they're here for the second public hearing?
is the home occupation?
Home occupation? Is that the case?
People here for home occupation or just sitting in on the commission meeting tonight?
From the sustainability committee.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
From the sustainability committee, but I was sitting in.
Okay. So we don't have to touch with the home occupation, or have you guys been working on it?
We have been, we're still talking about truck sizes and such.
Trucks. and-
Yeah, were there some outstanding questions on trucks?
Well, we have to open up the public hearing if we're gonna start talking about it, right?
Right, okay, go ahead, open it up.
Call.
The East Haddam Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May 24th at 8 p.m. at the Municipal Office Complex, Meeting Room 1 and 2, 1 Plains Road, Moodus, to hear the following. Revisions of customary home occupations, Section 27 of the East Haddam Planning and Zoning Regulations. You may access the YouTube live link from the town's website, www.easthaddam.org. At this hearing, interested parties shall be heard and correspondence received. Questions or comments about this application may be emailed to jventris@easthaddam.org during the hearing.
I'll let you, I haven't had a chance to catch up on all this.
Going over it a little at a time.
Yeah.
Here, I got an extra copy.
So just for tonight, on the home occupations, I think the thing that we were talking about last time that we talked was the handout for the trucks and the different classes of trucks. And we were questioning whether those were lightweights or gross weights. And I'm pretty sure they're lightweights. That's where I'm at. Did you get a chance to?
No, I didn't. That's the one thing I dropped the ball. I just,
So we open a public hearing for one when we don't have the answer.
no,
No,
no.
that's okay. I mean,
No.
that was
Motion
the-
to continue.
The issue about the.
Because it wasn't in the minutes and I totally,
Because,
I mean, the reality is that when you look at it and you wanna say, how do you regulate it? If you know what class truck it is, you got something to deal with. I mean,
well, I think it was class 4 was the one that was the largest truck that was allowed in home occupation areas, right?
so we've got class 4 listed, but the question was going back and forth between class 3 and class 4. you know,
Well,
because,
didn't we have a different class in the minors and?
Yep.
Then class 4 showed up in the moderate, right?
the minor was not to exceed class 2, which 10,000 pounds. And then the major or moderate had class 4 at 16,000, and the bidding was going back and forth between class 3 and class 4, I think, the last I know I had one person from the public who said it ought to stop at class, at 14,000. But other than that, that was the only comments I received from the public via
So it's
email.
down to the weight limit is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the lightweights, but I mean, in class 4, there's a variety of different vehicles. Every class has that.
So, can I just go back to one of the classes was split into A and B, and the public comment, I think, would more align with the A part of that class. So I would
Where do we have that?
I would say consider that. There was another handout that you had split one of the classes into A and B.
The old one.
And I think a natural delineation would be, and I can't remember if it's 2A or 3A, I think it was 2A, would be stopping it at 2A. I think that was about 15,000 pounds or something like that.
No.
I don't have the,
Between 2A and 2B is, from an F-150 to an F-250 is nothing. Yeah. You can't,
Oh, yeah, that was
that wouldn't make any sense.
Well, and F-250 isn't even large enough for half the people who are gonna want home markets.
It's not large enough for some people to have their own pickup truck.
Well, there are a lot of pickups that are.
Yeah.
No, take that back. I've got it. U.S. Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration defines vehicles as class 1 through 8, most common categorized in use in the fleet industry. Classes are based on the vehicle's gross vehicle weight rating, which is the maximum operating weight of the vehicle measured in pounds.
Right, that's,
So-
so those, I don't know where these numbers came from, but they're not grosses, because class 8 is 80,000. You know, I mean, it's tractor trailer or truck tractor, dump trucks you can get up to, that, if you get the overweight rate, it'd be 76.5. So, I mean, it's not 33,000, that's for sure.
Well, it says over. 33,000 and over.
Okay, so maybe, well, I don't know, this is the max load, so
Yeah,
the lightweight is,
that-
that's what they're giving you?
Yeah, that's the same what's on this. This chart matches.
So class 3 is 210.
That's the sheet, which is
Oh, that's the rest of this, okay.
the part. Well, no, it's different. It's different. Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, greater than 33,000.
greater. Yep.
Well,
So if you're looking at class 3, it's 10,000
let's
to
just stick with the
14,000.
classes and keep it simple. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's a standard for
exactly.
the
It's a
industry,
standard,
so,
yeah.
I mean, we're not going way up to class 8 anyway. I mean, that's what the,
Yeah.
what it is on these smaller vehicles, you're not aware of what the gross rates are because you don't get weighed. You rarely use would ever be weighed, whereas the bigger trucks are weighed all the time. That's why we know what these gross weights are. Is everybody good with the classes, sticking with that?
So what are you saying, the gross weight on a 2B is 10,000 pounds? That's the gross weight?
Well, I'd rather go with the
Class, which
the
class?
class,
are we on?
U.S. Department of Transportation, which is class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a class 4, as we've got listed in this, is 14,001 to 16,000 pounds, as where a class 3 is 10,001 to 14,000 pounds.
Yeah, but my point is the 14,000 considered gross vehicle
Yeah,
weight?
that'd be the gross
Yeah.
for that class, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what we were kind of determining.
What classes are we talking about?
Well, class 3 was down into the, like, if you have.
So we're talking about limiting home occupation to class 3 and below?
3 or 4, right now it's 4.
But it was 3 in the, I thought it was 3 in the minor, and 4 was allowed in the moderate. But
So
certainly no greater than that.
2, it's 2 in the not to exceed class 2, 10,000 pounds in the minor. That's what's here right now, which that's a utility van.
And that doesn't preclude any deliveries that you might get to your house, because.
No.
That's not a home
It's
occupation.
not permanent.
Trucks, so I mean, they're, or we deliver materials to people, and that, it's just, it's not part of their business. though.
No, this is the vehicle
Right.
parked outside your house. Yeah.
So moderate we're saying is 3 and 4?
No, just, moderate was up to 4. 4 was the biggest,
Yeah.
and that was Bob questioned whether 4 was even acceptable.
4's pretty big.
Yeah, Ford's pretty big, and I'm gonna have to say, as a real estate agent, if I'm trying to sell a house and there's this Mac Daddy parked next door all the time, that's gonna be a big negative.
Well, and I'm looking at it from, from the engineer, that's an SU 30 or an SU 40.
That's
And so is class 6, so what's the difference?
we
It's just
that
weight.
down to 3.
And quite honestly, yeah, if we want to be careful about what we put on the town roads, but they're both allowable on town roads.
Oh, yeah.
I think it should be brought down to 3.
Yeah, honestly,
Okay, nice
I think
paper.
4 looks like, that belongs in a park
Yeah,
somewhere.
I would not be happy if my neighbor had a 4.
Okay, now, Bob, you wanted to comment on this one?
Well, I just think that, when we're talking about, big trucks in residential zones.
Right.
And I think this is, opening the door to a much bigger industry than what we should be thinking about for home occupation.
Yeah.
We're talking about 2 employees, 4 employees. That's a $1 million a year business. When you're paying, when you've got a payroll like that. I think you're growing this thing to much bigger than what it needs to be. It needs to be for the guy who's a carpenter out there who's got his basically they're 1.5 ton or 3/4 ton trucks that the majority of them have. I mean, that's 10,000 pounds. I don't think we need to take and get these bigger trucks into residential zones. And, you're getting into 16,000 pounds, 14,000 pounds. Those are dump trucks. And I don't see any reason to have those in our residential zones. Matter of fact, if we go to any place that is basically a problem in the home occupation, it's contractors. All the rest of them are not contractors. If you've got a professional office or anything, those are not problem areas. It's the dump trucks, it's the trailers, it's the backhoes. That's the kind of stuff that's objectionable to the neighborhood. And I think that we're growing this thing way more than what we should be growing. And I think we should go in the other direction. Let's take and limit it, and then if you've got those kind of big trucks, get them into a commercial zone. That was the purpose of a commercial zone. Let's get our trucks somewhere else. And, like I say, most of those occupations that we see, we don't have any problems with. But I just think that one area where you're dealing with contractors, and especially if you're landscape contractors, that's where it's objectionable in the neighborhood. So I think you should be topping off at 10,000 for anything that's basically in your minor zones, and probably I think that 12,000 is maximum in any of your medium zones. So, but that's my opinion. But I just think that we don't need to take and have these trucks in residential zones. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment while we're opening it up for the public here?
Well, the only thing I was gonna say,
Have to
my
identify
wife
yourself.
is, she can say everything. She and I know pretty much exactly the same thing. When we left Florida, there were areas where,
I need to have your name for the record.
Edric, I agree with the gentleman over here in that you've got residential areas where, residential areas, and a lot of those guys are construction workers, and there were lots set aside and actually put evergreens around them so that you couldn't see the dump trucks and what have you. They could easily get from their house to their commercial vehicle in a minute or two, so it wasn't a huge inconvenience. And I think the inconvenience is when you've got some really ugly commercial vehicles parked next to you, and sometimes they even put the signs on the side of the vehicles, which really just takes insult to injury because it's like, what happened to my cute little, lakeside town?
Deb, what's your husband's name again?
Edgar, RIEC.
Just for the record, since our recording secretary's not here. I guess I have a quick question for the commission, is why were we getting down into class 3, class 4? Since I wasn't here and I'm playing catch up.
Well, that was the discussion about where the limits were, and we had some previous,
Didn't this whole thing start with people moving and having big equipment and stuff?
Yeah, it was kind of like a migration. They got larger and larger.
well, that's why we started trying to.
Back
break
in
it down
November,
into
it was
classes.
class 5,
Yeah.
and we worked our way backwards.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Class 5?
But we talked about, say, somebody in a residential zone has 20-plus acres and could bury his truck someplace and not interfere with a neighbor.
Yeah,
I
but
think that was the,
then he sells 18 of them, but he still has the business.
Well,
so, I mean, that was part of the discussion we were having.
I mean, that's part of the way we live in our town, and some of us have a lot of land owners,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even notice they're there, so, but,
We put it in a barn.
or they can keep it inside or whatever, but I mean, it's definitely, we've gone around and around with this a few times, but
And everything in moderate is special exception anyhow.
in moderate is.
Yeah.
So,
And then you have guys with 350s, dualies, that have
that are just
fifth
pickup
wheel
trucks.
trailers.
Well, yeah, they just pull their camper around, these
Or
are private
horses.
vehicles.
I don't know how you legislate this.
Yeah, well, this
So
is
can you
what-
require something over 12,000 pounds to be enclosed in a structure, a permanent structure?
Oh, buffer.
Well, you
Remember,
also
we didn't
have
want
all
the-
the mini horse farmers and everybody else, and they're all running dually F-350s.
Yeah.
How big is a dually?
A 350 would be a class 4.
Would be a
Believe-
class
Let's see,
4.
well, 350 starts at class 3.
Well, the campers now are
I
450s.
drive it.
23-foot camper, 24-foot, it's a 450.
Yeah, but I don't need a commercial license to own a camper.
No, but it's still in your yard.
Yeah,
Well, you don't, but you don't need a CDL all the way up to class 6. That's
no,
just-
but I'm also not opening up a home occupant.
No, but I'm just saying, you don't need a CDL to drive anything unless
Home
it's
business
over
occupants
26,000.
comes through here, then if I buy a camper, I need a permit.
Yeah, we're talking about a business here.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the,
We
hang
have-
on, okay, Tony?
No, it's just, again, in the small lake community, there's a neighbor that, just moved in and he has a pickup truck, but sometimes he comes home with a dually and a 16-foot trailer with a tractor on the back of it, and then just backs it into the woods. You know, it's not every day, but at least 2-3 times a week, he's bringing this, you know.
Does he own the woods that he's backing into?
Does he own the woods? Yeah.
He does.
Yeah, but it's, you know, I mean, the truck and the trailer is larger than the little house he lives in, you know, and the roads are like, what, 20 feet wide?
If that.
No, you're being generous there.
Yeah, you are, I was gonna say.
So,
Yeah, so I understand, it doesn't belong there.
no, but how do you know, one day he comes home with a pickup, and then Sunday afternoon, he pulls in with this,
Well, let's face it, as we write these and we come up with something, there's no such thing as perfect, and it's not gonna apply perfectly to everybody. We're just trying to get some standards that we can follow and do our best. It's not gonna be perfect, we know that.
But he doesn't have a home occupation there, right?
no,
So it could
not
be
that
that
I know of.
he borrowed a tractor from somebody to do some work somewhere at a different area.
Or he was going to the job in Monday morning and just, you know, I'm thinking saving gas, you know, why he's doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Know that. All right, so what's the feeling of the commission as to this class 3 and, or 2, 3, 4? Where does everybody stand?
I'd err on the side of smaller.
Smaller,
Yeah.
okay.
10,000, I think. would be-
To me, the trucks look the same as their payload, so.
So what class would you feel is acceptable? Go ahead. What do you
I don't
think?
have a problem with a class 4.
Okay. Class 4, class 2. Ed?
Take it,
Class 2?
I'm gonna go 3.
we'll take
Three.
an average.
Okay,
you-
we got 3.
I go down
Get
to
off the
lower-
fence.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 is predominant. I'll have to side with the truckers, so I'm going with class 4. Go ahead.
It seems like if you have the property, class 4 isn't a problem.
Well, that's what I was wondering, I mean, do we
It's
put,
special exception, we're gonna review each
Special
one.
exceptions, so
You're gonna
you can
review
ask
it.
for a larger-
Yeah, that's what we said.
Okay.
I would say
4.
lower, but if somebody's got 20 acres, then I would be very receptive to them,
Okay.
getting permission from the neighbors.
So here's the way, I mean, I just feel this is playing out is, if we're gonna go with the moderates, then class 2 is acceptable, not moderate, but for the minors.
Yeah.
Class 2 is acceptable, and we could accept under special exception all the way up to class 4, but they gotta show us how they're gonna
Right.
either buffer it or
Or
house it in
shelter it,
a
yeah.
garage or something like that.
so yeah, we can amend the regulation, we're thinking that, you know, anything above class 2 has to be buffered to the
That says
satisfaction
it
of the
now.
planning and zoning board.
It says it now. All equipment and vehicles are to be appropriately screened.
But we'll also limit it to, you're not getting any bigger than class 4. That's the way I see it.
We wanna put a minimum
If you
acreage
can
on a class 4.
Tuck it away
No,
somewhere.
I'd
I
just
think
say appropriate
screened is
screen.
very
Special
vague. I
exception,
think
so.
Make
that
sure
could
they
be
come in
an
with a plan
ugly
to show screen.
closet that's falling apart with the first wind. So I think we need to be more specific instead of saying screen, because they may think one tree is adequate.
No, that's your call as special
Well,
exception.
Yeah, we
You
could
could-
say what we expect the screening to be, it's gotta be
Yeah.
5 or 6 foot tall trees and so many on center, because we've done
Yeah.
that before.
Then there's also
Yeah,
mention,
we will come down on them.
there was also mention of the size of the road where we would allow this.
Well, that's what we did do in the moderate,
Yep.
and when we went to, moderate, it's, only under, state, what
State
did we have, state road?
State road, yeah.
Okay, so we've done that, and then that's not been around before, because we were accepting everything.
State roads and minor collector roads.
So let's say, that would make the Colchester Turnpike, but certainly not in your area or anything like that.
Or on Judah Lane.
Some of the side roads, Clark Hill, Cold Spring Road, those areas would be out.
Yeah.
For moderate level stuff.
How about for businesses or home occupations that are already there, they're
Well, they're
grandfathered in?
grandfathered in, and this would
Right.
not affect them.
Just because,
And they can, and just for the record, they can renew, right?
Some of them actually have to come and apply.
They, but you have
You want this-
automatic
you
renewal.
wanna see
when
the
you come
list?
in and
Yeah,
take
are there
over
some
existing.
sunsets on some of these that are grandfathered in?
Only if they drop it.
Okay, so they're not required to renew?
No, not
They
at
don't
this
have to
one.
come
no.
back and reapply
Yeah.
all the time.
No.
So have we pounded out the trucking issue?
Now it's up to Jim to enforce it.
So anyway, you'll have something for us to,
Cleaned up? Well, actually,
Yeah, because
we
that's-
didn't change anything from what's here. If you're good with class 4, not exceeding class 4, then everything in your hands is still what we had the last
Did
two
you take a
times.
vote on who said to go down versus 4? How did the vote?
well, I just
Did you
suggested
count?
that as a, can we accept that we limit everything class 2 on the minor level, it can't exceed a class 2 truck on the minor level, which is acceptable in all the zones.
Right,
And,
but
but
the
if
upper level,
you, under special exception for the moderate level, home occupation, you'd have to show us where you're putting it. That would be the maximum size vehicle you could have.
okay,
I like that.
I mean, that's the concept that
Okay,
I'm thinking
okay.
is.
Yeah, that's what we've been talking about for the last month.
I know, we gotta get done with it somehow, okay.
Special exception.
Yeah, let me just clarify this, so basically we're saying that it's no bigger than a class 2 unless it goes to a special exception.
And that'd be a moderate, just.
And
And that's
Only-
topped off at a class 4.
And only if it's on a collector road or a state road.
For moderate.
So you can't come for a special exception for a moderate on a cul-de-sac or a, small road. Yeah.
But basically, the only way you can go past the 2 is to go through special exception process. So it
Right,
has to be-
and they would end up being on, collector roads or state highway.
That's fair.
Hey,
Hey.
Maybe,
Way to go, Chip.
Quick, somebody
maybe.
say something.
What else needs to be hammered out on this?
I think that was the last thing, is that the last thing we had?
That was it.
Oh, good.
That's exactly what you had, right?
Final one to approve next
Well,
time.
yeah.
You've got it.
Jim will update the.
No, there was nothing to update. You have it in your hand.
Okay, so this is gonna be
Cause it
it.
still says class 4.
So do we wanna think about it before we vote on this for the
I
next?
need, yeah, I need to read it.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah,
So-
that'd be good.
Everybody's working with the one that says with April
Yep.
2022 notes.
Yeah, draft July 15,
Got it.
with April
Yep.
2002 notes, yeah. And a motion to continue?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, do you have any,
No, nothing at this late hour. No,
no, I mean, anything?
no. Kinda
We're
cleared
gonna
it.
address Tony's issue, now that we're out of that whole public hearing about,
Oh, the half acre and the,
yeah,
so if they do apply, they do have to provide a full site plan, full engineer, full Chatham Health District review. So if they can't comply with the public health code, they can't convert it. So when it comes time to who's supposed to inspect it, the best thing is for the people who get the CFHA mortgage, because they make people go in and do full inspections. People that spend cash sometimes don't follow through on that, and they get caught with some real substandard stuff. Most mortgages require a full water, radon, septic, and structural inspection. So,
But there's no, it's up to the mortgage company to find out if it's in compliance.
the septic system, no, it's only in,
The house being sold, that, septic.
so it usually comes to the inspection of the site at the time. If it's functioning, then it's functioning, and if it's not, they, do they always catch that? No. But as to whether it's code complying to the Connecticut Public Health Code, no. All they're looking is testing that septic system's working or not, or seems to be functioning. They have a disclaimer at the bottom of that inspection form. I used to write one of
All
those.
the finance companies are requiring the septic inspection, so there's some certified company coming in and look, if it's financed.
Yeah.
Cash buyers can say, hey, we don't care.
No, it's financed out of state, mortgage.
Somebody should have come in and looked at the septic, because that's usually a requirement of financing. I mean, I've never seen it
Yeah,
not.
I mean, I'm not saying it's failing or anything, but, it's the issue where, something is, documented when it's first sold, and then once it's sold to the next owner, those documentations don't follow the house. Like deed restrictions or anything like that, so.
Happens every day.
Yeah, but there's no one who's gonna account for it, right? I mean,
No, like the year-round and seasonal use is on the tax card, that's where that's being picked up, that you don't have year-round use unless it says it on the tax card. So that's where, if they don't and they want it, they have to apply and submit an entire site plan to meet everything, as you well know.
yeah,
Right, yeah, so.
okay. Thank you.
okay, anything else from anyone?
I'm good.
Motion to adjourn. I got it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
You guys are almost in harmony on that one, like, pretty good.
Give us
getting
an
along
update.
I think it's the same people, right, every meeting?
Huh?
I'm tired.